What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Today we have another special guest, Drew Bent. He's the co-founder and COO of Schoolhouse.world. He studied physics and CS at MIT, and he was also a former Khan Academy intern. So welcome to the show, Drew.
Thanks for having me, Sachin. It's a real pleasure. I've been watching the show, and it's an honor to be on it.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So what's new and exciting?
New and exciting. Well, there's always exciting things going on. You mentioned earlier that I was a Khan Academy intern. It's been great because now we have our own interns at Schoolhouse, and I get to think about how my own experience, my own career really started as an intern. And so we have been in the process of hiring software interns at Schoolhouse. So that always keeps it lively. Let's see what else has been exciting. We get to work with TikTok influencers at Schoolhouse. We were just talking about this earlier, but basically my job every day is something different. So some days I'm writing code, some days we're trying to reach out to top TikTok influencers to share about Schoolhouse. Some days I get to go on podcasts like this. Some days we're iterating on the product. So it's always fun.
That's really cool. What is Schoolhouse.world like? Tell the audience what Schoolhouse is.
Well, hopefully people know what a schoolhouse is, a physical schoolhouse. No, what our world is, many of the audience is probably familiar with Khan Academy, which is, free world-class education, and it's mainly asynchronous videos and exercises. Schoolhouse.world is a separate nonprofit, but also started by Sal Khan, that is live tutoring. So we're talking about like live Zoom calls where you can go to get free tutoring in math and test prep. We started during the pandemic, and now we have learners and tutors from 100 countries.
Yeah, Schoolhouse is really amazing. And for people watching and listening, I'm actually involved in Schoolhouse. I've been a tutor since...
Yeah.
I've been
one of the founding tutors.
Yeah, I'm one of the founding tutors at Schoolhouse. I've been in the community since July of 2020. It's literally changed my life, helping so many students from around the world. It's just an amazing initiative. I mean, 100% free tutoring. Like, what's better than that? Everybody should be using this platform. So I really think what we're doing as a community is amazing.
Here's a question for you. What has been the most surprising thing about tutoring on Schoolhouse for you?
The most surprising thing was, the first session I ever did, it was actually a middle-aged man in his 50s who joined my session all the way from Iowa. He joined my session, and I was kind of confused because I didn't really understand why there's an adult. I was expecting to be tutoring like kids my age or maybe kids a little younger or older than me. So I just was going along with it. And then eventually the next few sessions, he told me he's trying to get his high school diploma. I'm like, whoa, that's cool. That's really interesting. He told me he dropped out when he was in 9th grade, and then he wanted to use Schoolhouse to get his GED. So I'm like, wow, that's really inspiring. So I've been tutoring him since when I joined in July of 2020. He's improved so much, and that's the most surprising thing. We're like buddies now. We talk to each other almost every day.
He's becoming a tutor himself, right?
He is, yeah. He's a tutor already. Yeah, so that's awesome. A learner who joined the platform in his 50s, trying to get his high school diploma, and now a tutor on the platform. That's incredible.
Basically, you can explain the platform better than I can, so we should just walk around together.
Yeah, no, we'll have you do that for the show. I can do that in some other videos. No. Why did you start Schoolhouse, and how did you get the position of COO?
Well, it does actually start with this internship you mentioned. So I have a programming background, and so I did some software internships at Khan Academy in 2012, 2013. And that's when Sal wrote this book. Sal Khan of Khan Academy, he wrote a book called One World Schoolhouse. You'll see where the name comes from. And in that book, he was talking about, well, we have a big part of a high quality education is the content, the videos, the exercises that are now available for free through Khan Academy. But what about the live interactions, the community, the social part? So these ideas are things we've been thinking about since 2012. But it wasn't until the pandemic, which of course rocked the education world, where we realized that people were really, truly craving social interaction. And simultaneously, we've been experimenting with this idea of peer tutoring, where high schoolers, folks like you, I think, did you start tutoring at 13 or 14?
13. The young, 13. You have to be 13 to join the platform. So I was 13 and I joined, and boom, from there.
So yeah, exactly. So the idea of peer tutors, people, like you, Sachin, who are tutoring as high schoolers, tutoring other high schoolers, tutoring adults, those are ideas we've been working on at Khan Lab School. That's another place that I worked at. It's a physical school in Mountain View. And so after doing programming at Khan Academy, I was a math teacher at Khan Lab School. And so we've been prototyping a lot what it looked like to have students teaching other students, but that was in a physical classroom. Then the pandemic occurred, and Sal actually got together with one of his college friends, Shashir, and they said, we really need to start something. And the first person they recruited was Mariah, who I think we'll talk about this later, built this platform, entire platform of Schoolhouse on this no-code platform called Coda. And then I actually got looped in first. Sal gave me a call one day and said, we need a tutor on this platform. And we want to use it with students at Khan Lab School. And I was a teacher at that point at Khan Lab School. And so I started in the capacity of, running my own tutoring sessions, bringing my own learners on it. And then by the time we got to the fall of 2020, I think is that the right year, Sachin? 2020 is when we turned into a nonprofit. And that's when I took on this role as COO.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Sal gave you a call, Sal Khan. That's pretty cool. And then so you have experience at Khan Academy and Khan Lab School. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
Cool. That's really cool. So obviously Sal believes that the education system right now is not the best, and education should be free. Obviously, Khan Academy is free. Schoolhouse.world is free. Do you believe that education should be entirely free? Because you went to MIT and you also went to Stanford, but that obviously wasn't free. But do you believe that it should be like completely 100% free? What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's a good question. There's multiple parts to it. There's the K-12, up to high school, and then there's the college part. I think, and maybe I'll bite my words here, I think in a utopia that I would think about is it's really about access and giving everyone the opportunity to go. And right now, a place like MIT, like you mentioned, it does provide a lot of financial scholarship opportunities, but not every school's like that. Not every school's need blind, not every school provides scholarships. And if you think about high school, like think about paid SAT tutors. That is something that's very inequitable of who has access to it. So in an ideal world, maybe it's free for everyone, or maybe there's still this notion of cross subsidization of people who are able to, who have more means, or able to cross subsidize other people. But I think the most important part is that people shouldn't be denied access to top educational resources based on their zip code, which is entirely the case right now, unfortunately. And yes, we have public education, that is free, but the key insight here is there's a lot of education that happens outside the classroom. How do you get help on your homework? Can your parents help you? Do you have a paid tutor? Can you go to a private university later? And those are the types of things where I think a lot of inequity can creep in if we're not careful. And so that's, if we think about Khan Academy, if we think about Wikipedia, if we think about Schoolhouse.world, that's the level playing field we're trying to provide.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the whole mission of Schoolhouse and what your thoughts were, all the points you said right now. We discussed earlier Mariah and Coda and Shashir. Do you want to explain what Coda is and how we started on Coda and how that was like?
Yeah, so the way, and you know it because you were on Coda from the early days. Coda, the way to think about Coda is, probably most of the viewers have used Google Docs, Google Drive. But, what's one level further? You can make documents on Google Docs. But what if you wanted to make an interactive document with buttons and an app? And in our case, we wanted to build a platform that could connect tutors and learners, right? So that's a little hard to do in a Google Doc. I guess you could imagine maybe people could put their available times, you could paste in all the Zoom links, it would be a complete mess, right? So you need something a little more powerful. So there's these platforms called no-code tools, which are basically platforms where even, anyone as a non-programmer is able to make an app, right? Like a web app. And so that's what Coda is. Other similar platforms are Notion and Airtable. Sal knew Shashir, who's the CEO of Coda, from MIT. They graduated from MIT a couple decades ago, and realized that this first version of the tutoring platform could be built on Coda. Mariah is the one who became the top 0.001% of Coda builders who learned how to build the entire Schoolhouse.world platform on Coda. And that actually lasted us a really long time. It wasn't until the end of 2020 that we hit the limits of what could be done with no code. And then we realized we needed to use code. And so we incorporated as a nonprofit, raised some funding, hired some programmers, and built the website from scratch.
So is Coda similar to Wix? Is it sort of like that?
Yeah. I haven't used Wix too much, but it's like a web. Have you used Wix?
Yes, I have. I mean, I obviously know. I just for the people watching, listening. I know how Coda works and everything.
Yeah.
It's just for people understanding. Coda is like.
Yeah, you tell me what's the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's like Docs, and it's kind of like Google Docs as well. It's like everything. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, is that what? Yeah, that's a good analogy. Is like Wix is only for websites. Coda lets you go between, like you could use it as a Google Doc, like privately, just like you and your friends.
Yeah.
But you could also make it public, like a Wix website. So it's kind of somewhere in between the two. Yeah. You know what? Actually, last note on that, sometimes they call it low floor, high ceiling. It starts very simple, but then you can build it into something really sophisticated. Yeah.
Yeah. So for people watching right now, so pretty much how Schoolhouse started is it was started on Coda, and then eventually we hired programmers, and then the website is all coded right now. So
this magically got built.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful website. You should check it out. It's not schoolhouse.world.com. It's not schoolhouse.world.com. It's just schoolhouse.world. And obviously
the URL.
Yeah, that's the URL. And obviously to have such a beautiful platform, you have to have an amazing team. So Drew, do you want to talk about your team and share what they do?
Right. So we talked about the programming part. That's not the only part of a organization or even a website. So we have a team that does everything from the engineering to the design. When you talk about beautiful, you're probably not talking about the code, Sachin. You're probably talking about the visual. So we have a great designer, Jackie. And we also have this whole community, which goes beyond just a website. We have a active Slack community. I don't know, a couple thousand, 1,000-2,000 people in our Slack. You would probably know the current number, Sachin, more than me, but that is run by our head of community, who's Mariah, who built the first version Coda. So we have a small but very tight-knit group of 7 full-time employees. And then we have this large community of over 1,000 volunteers that, Sachin could tell you all better than I could, but volunteers do everything from our social media team, reaching out to the TikTok influencers, to running our certification system, to mentoring other tutors, to auditing, to creating our blog. The whole organization.
So obviously when Schoolhouse started in Coda, I was like, we're still in our early days, but that was like extreme early days, like newborn days. How has it grown, like from that day all the way to now? How has the growth been?
Yeah, so maybe it's if those were infant days, we're now in toddler days.
Yeah.
So it's still early on, but what we found was, the last year has been just great in terms of how many people we've been able to reach. We now have over 1,000 tutors who've tutored at least one session. These are the volunteers I was mentioning earlier. We have learners that have attended, I think we're, close to 3 million learning minutes on the platform. They've attended, thousands and thousands of sessions. And I think really the diversity of the learners who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford, paid tutoring on tutoring platforms are coming to Schoolhouse. They see it as this free resource, and they're coming from 100+ countries. And the connections that have formed, you mentioned earlier, Sachin, like your friendship with Carl. There are just hundreds of these stories of people who have connected tutors and tutors, learners and learners, tutors and learners. And like you said, it's also dynamic. People may be tutoring in some things, learning in other things.
Yeah, just to clarify, Carl is the man in his 50s.
That's right.
Yeah. And then my audience has seen the documentary, so you're probably familiar with that, guys. So Drew, on top of all the fantastic things that you do, you're also a Stanford Knight Hennessy Scholar. Tell me more about that.
I was, so after MIT, which I did for undergrad, I went to Stanford for grad school. So I studied physics and CS at MIT in undergrad, and then I moved over to the education school. And some of you may not know, but in addition to there's school for school, it's kind of a meta thing. You have a graduate school education that studies how to teach, how to educate, which is of course very important for the work that I'm doing now. I started there, and then I also spent a few quarters at the business school at Stanford. I was fortunate to do it through the scholarship you mentioned, Knight Hennessy, which is a fully funded scholarship to basically support people who are looking to, go into service and leadership within their various roles. So it was a great experience, and I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, I did some research on it. It's for specifically students who are like solving the world's biggest issues. So like, big congrats on achieving that.
And we can't deny that giving free tutoring to everyone in the world is a big issue. So like I said, we're in the toddler stages. There's a lot of work to go. If you're watching this, pod interview, and you want to get involved, like we'd love to have you join us.
Yeah, get involved. Let's stop with the questions a little bit. How can people donate?
Well, Schoolhouse.world, like you said, that's the URL. People can go there, and really the best way to start is to sign up, create an account. And there's many ways to get involved as learners. You can attend, we don't just have math and test prep, we also have community events, game nights, all of these things. And then if you want to tutor in any of the subjects we offer, you can join to become a tutor. And if you want to get involved in social media, if you want to hang out with Sachin, if you want to do other things, often the best way to do that is to become a tutor. And then you can start getting involved in other parts of the organization.
Yeah, and to donate, it's schoolhouse.world/donate because
that's right.
It's a nonprofit, so you can go there and donate.
You were an early donor, so thank you for that, Sachin.
Yeah, you got it. We got to do that. So as an author, Drew is also an author, EdTech entrepreneur, super smart person, and an author. As an author of the book Points of View, 4 Friends from MIT and Growing Up, and that's been featured on Forbes. Drew is an EdTech entrepreneur, and he's been featured on Forbes for this book. What's the book about, and why did you decide to co-write it?
So the book you're talking about, which we self-published on Amazon, I did it with 3 of my friends, Julia, Mina, and Vic. It was really Vic's brainchild, and he got us together one day while we were still at MIT, actually, and said, Vic had younger siblings, and he was saying, I'm trying to write down some pieces of advice and reflections from my own experiences going through high school and then college. What are the things that I want to share with my younger siblings? And then I thought on my own, and I was like, what would I want, what should I have known when I was in 10th grade? And so that was really the perspective we started with, is could we share we know that people don't like to read a lot, people like to read tweets, right? Tweets are short. So we basically built a book full of, tweet or long tweet length, little stories and anecdotes and pieces of advice. And we put it into different categories, everything from life choices to relationships, to family, to school. And yeah, it's seen a great response. Honestly, for me, it was just useful because it helped me articulate some of my values. But a side effect was that now we've had thousands of people read this book, and, people write us, all the time saying how, maybe not everything resonates, but some key parts resonate, and it forces them to wrestle with the ideas themselves. And that was really the key point.
Awesome. Do you want to share your experience at MIT and Stanford? Because a lot of high schoolers watching this probably really want to get into those schools. But let's get the inside scoop. How was it?
Well, what do you want to know in particular? You're a high schooler.
Yeah, that's true. How about the community and the professors?
So, and those are related, actually. Often people think of community as just the students, and I'm biased here. My parents are professors, and so I realize professors are not these, scary beings that are separate and disparate from or distinct from the rest of the community. So, one of my actually really fun moments at MIT was there was a program at MIT where you could MIT would pay you to take your professor out to dinner. So 4 or 5 friends could get together. Imagine doing this with your 10th grade chemistry teacher. It's kind of wild, but this is what happens in college. So they would pay us for I think $20 a person to have these meals and get to know your professors. So I did this with all my professors throughout MIT. And I feel like that was a really key part of it, because I got to know, it really felt like this smaller community than just, what often is an adversarial relationship, students and professors grading you. So that was great. And Stanford and MIT are more similar than you would think. And there's a lot of crossover between the 2 schools. And so very, very similar vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought about this question right now, but I think it's a really good question for the audience. So what's your best piece of advice aspiring EdTech entrepreneurs, people who want to start their own company, entrepreneurs, high schoolers, or just people that want to get involved in the education industry?
That's a big question. Education in particular, or entrepreneurship? Or
Well,
both?
EdTech entrepreneurship, somewhere in between, like just, actually you can just go, what's your best piece of advice to anyone?
Yeah, best piece of advice. Well, I always like the advice, which is to be careful about following advice. Because at the end of the day, you need to find what resonates with you. And that's what we sort of found in the book as well. It's like, if we try to just like share one piece of advice, like it's different for everyone. Like, I don't know your, experiences growing up. So yeah, I'm sort of dodging the question here, but I think here's a meta piece of advice is helpful when it's personalized. So if I shared something here, it'd be a little tricky, but I'm open to having conversations with anyone. People reach out to me on LinkedIn, on email. So if people want to reach out about anything, whether it's college or, whatever it is, getting into EdTech, internships, any of these things, I'm open. My email is Schoolhouse.world. People can find me on LinkedIn. They can just message me. And so that's the type of thing where it's, just reaching out to people. We forget that everyone in the world, not everyone, but a lot of people, because the world's becoming increasingly connected on the internet, are what in the past could have been like a month to travel to France to talk to someone, by boat. Now you can do it in 10 seconds over email. For example, I just read a book a week ago, emailed the author, and they wrote back in like, an hour. Like, that's how close we are to people. And so, general advice, maybe, take it or leave it, but reaching out to people for specific things, telling your story, where you're stuck, how they can help, like, highly recommend.
Well, that's a great way to end off the episode. So guys, check out Schoolhouse. You can reach out to Drew as well. Drew, what was your favorite part being on the show?
Favorite part? I really like your question about should education be free? It's such a fundamental question, and I actually think there's a lot of nuance there, and I don't think I gave it complete justice, so I'm going to be thinking about that question more.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It was so awesome to interview you, and also, actually, Drew was just in my backyard. Schoolhouse is in-person meetups, so join the community, check it out. There's a Slack. It's literally like a family. Like Drew, I'm related to Drew. We're like brothers. So
literally did a 23andMe test and we're related. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Drew. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And guys, make sure to hit the subscribe button. You can comment any questions you have for Drew and I. You can check out my website, ochakde.com. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate it, Sachin.